Today, we're going to talk about your favorite topic, fashion. In fact, it's a topic everyone can relate to. But what we're not talking about is just how dangerous our fashion is to our health. Let me ask you a question. When presenting to your doctor with certain symptoms, have you ever been asked what type of clothes you wear? Probably not. But the truth is, it should be on everyone's differential diagnosis because fast fashion is fastly killing us. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. T, and I'm happy to have you join us on the Healthy Bump Club platform today as we talk about the effects of fashion on our health. If this is your first time joining, go ahead and click the subscribe button because I got a lot to share with you today, and I don't want you to miss anything. Sadly, not too many people are considering how much fashion is affecting our health. While we're having the conversation about how fashion is affecting the environment, we seem to miss the boat when it comes to talking about how it directly impacts our health. And granted, it does impact our health via the environment, but I'm talking about the direct contact of our fashion to our skin, the largest organ in our body that is highly absorbent. And there are many ways that fashion affects our health. But before we get into all of it, let's talk about the psychological aspect of fashion. So, one question we all have is how did we possibly get here? How did we get to the point where fast fashion is so rapidly growing? While there are many things we can talk about when it comes to fast fashion, whether it's about the child labor, low wages, or unsafe working conditions, one of the most interesting thing about fast fashion is just how rapidly the industry is growing. The question is, why is this industry exploding literally at our fingertips? If I tell you some of the numbers, it's going to blow your mind. So I'm going to share some very important figures with you. It's estimated that global fashion consumption has grown by 400% over the past 20 years. In fact, clothing production is the third largest manufacturing industry worldwide, second to the automotive and technology industries. The average American throws away 81 pounds of clothes annually. And when it comes to production, 24 million tons of cotton are produced every single year. Why is fast fashion growing so rapidly? Some will say we just like the fact to have options. I mean, who doesn't like the ability to just change things up every now and then? Perhaps for a special moment. Perhaps you're a content creator and forbid that anyone sees you in an outfit twice. Oh, gag. The question is, how much is it worth to us? Is it worth our health? Are we willing to pay the high price for a low cost? And is that moment worth the change? In fact, Shein, which is one of the leaders in the fast fashion industry, adds an average of 6,000 new styles to its site every single day. And granted, those styles do not go to waste because as quickly as they add new styles is as quickly as shoppers buy. Shein has gotten into so much trouble, y'all, when it comes to how they manage their fashion from just the alleged working conditions to the alleged stealing of fashion, where you have fashion designer creators who are claiming that industry leaders like Shein allegedly take their images off of social media and repost it onto their website. And the thing is, the way that these major production companies are built, they're able to produce rapidly. And so they can take a mock-up and produce it immediately. That's part of the problems. But here's the question. How and why do we desire so much fashion? Some would argue that part of the issue is the dying wealth of the middle class, the growing wealth gap across the entire world. Simply to feel wealthier, even though the middle class is getting poorer, part of the way that middle class individuals feel wealthier is by the ability to consume large amounts of items, regardless of the quality. And granted, when we talk about fast fashion, we're also talking about your footwear. Some people like to change their shoes a lot. Some people like to change their outfits a lot. Other people like to change the decor in their home. Altogether, it is a sign of overconsumption. And the problem with overconsumption is the desire for people to feel wealthy. And so, because you lack wealth, you compensate by purchasing a high volume of items in order to feel that you are wealthy, in order to appear that you have when you don't. It is one of the very simplest way in which these industries have confused the mind to being part of the haves means that you are able to buy large quantities, even if it's toxic to you, even if it's poor quality, even if it doesn't last long. The problem is this overconsumption has just resulted in astronomical waste. So let's talk about the top countries that produce most textile waste annually. China leads the top with an averaging of 20 million tons, followed by the US with 17 million tons, followed by India with 8 million tons, then Italy rounding out at 465,000 tons, and Germany. It's estimated that about 57% of clothing goes to landfills globally, and around 25% of fashion is incinerated. In fact, developed countries like the US, like Australia, like the UK, are known for sending their excess fashion overseas to developing nations. The problem is nations like Ghana that receive tons and tons of textile waste have reported that about 40% of the clothing they receive is just simply unusable, producing now an environmental hazard in their countries due to the piling up of landfills. It's estimated that 60% of new clothing items end up in landfills within a year after being sold. Y'all, this is a $40 billion industry. So the cost to the environment is great. By 2030, which we're not that far away, it's estimated that the fashion industry will be responsible for 1.24 billion tons of carbon dioxide. The fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global CO2 consumption. In fact, the fast fashion companies create more pollution than aviation and shipping sectors combined. And part of the problem is that only 12% of fashion companies disclose how many items they produce annually. So we really don't have the greatest tracking of just how wasteful the industry is. Fewer than 11% of fashion brands have recycling strategies for their items that they produce. Textile and fabric waste accounts for nearly 10% of municipal solid waste in the US. 93 billion cubic meters of water are consumed annually by the fast fashion industry to create clothing. Textile waste contributes to 9% of microplastic pollution in the world's oceans. And you guys, we've talked about the impact of microplastics and just how devastating microplastics are to the entire earth and to our health. Go back to that episode if you missed it. It takes about 2,700 liters of water to make one cotton t-shirt. Fast fashion is responsible for 20% of global wastewater, mainly due to dyeing the textiles. An average of 14 clothing items per person on the planet are produced each year, you guys. This is a big problem, and the problem is way bigger than most people even realize. The industry generates an estimated 92 million tons of waste per year, a figure expected to rise to 134 million tons annually by the year 2030. Around 100 billion new clothing items are created every year, which adds to the waste level. Here's the thing. No one thinks about, while we talk about the impact to the environment, and there are many, no one really considers the direct impact that impact has on our health. So let's get into the impact these textiles have on your health. The problem is when we talk about growing cancers, are the rising rates of metabolic diseases, or we talk about endocrinopathies. No one really includes clothing in this conversation, yet it's the one thing that our body contacts every single day. And the problem is, we are so desperate to have fast fashion for whatever reason that we're not even thinking about the cost it has to our health. Let's talk about polyester, for example, right? So many of our clothing are made out of polyester, polyester blends, etc. But producing polyester requires 70 million barrels of oil every single year. Yet when you think about your clothing, you're not really thinking about these industrial ingredients. You're not really thinking about the petroleum. You're not thinking about the oil industry. You're thinking directly about clothing, right? But we need to start connecting these dots because the clothing is making great hazards to our health. Hazardous chemicals are embedded within fabrics. Dyes contain heavy metals, and these heavy metals can include things like lead, cadmium, mercury, are quickly used to stabilize the pigments and improve the color fastness by preventing color degradation over time. So these heavy metals are used to prevent the dyeing of the clothing from fading. Yet we don't really pay attention to this, though we talk about things like the amount of mercury in fish. We're not talking about the amount of mercury in the clothing that pregnant women wear. That's a big deal. To make clothing water repellent and stain resistant, manufacturers apply coatings with different types of PFAS materials. And if you're kind of like, PFAS sounds familiar, yes, those are those forever chemicals that never go away, neither from the environment nor from the human body. And kids are not exempt from this. There were safety tests done on products produced by two major industrial leaders, sounding like Emu and ABCDE Express, show that 43% of 90 children's products examined, including watches and clay sets and toys and pencils, contain hazardous substances. Beyond the color and functionality, clothing undergoes chemical treatments to improve longevity and resistance to external factors. One of the most concerning substances used in this process is formaldehyde. Yes, formaldehyde, you guys, which is applied to the fabrics to prevent wrinkles and shrinkage and mildew growth. Despite knowing that formaldehyde is a known carcinogen that we have definitely talked about and is an irritant to the skin, causing also respiratory issues and allergic reactions, and even some brain disorders, people don't really question the fact that formaldehyde is a part of the process, nor is it really disclosed to the general public when it is used in helping the clothing have a longer shelf life. Here's the thing though, as much as we talk about formaldehyde and its impact in helping clothing to last a little bit longer, part of what may surprise people is also the use of antibiotics. So when we talk about the growth and the increase in drug resistance bacteria, we need to include fast fashion in that conversation because antimicrobial agents that foster bacterial resistance are included in our fashions. And sometimes even just the proliferation of bacteria on synthetic materials lead to some of our dermatological issues. Toxic chemicals penetrate our skin, our scalp, everything from our headwear to our dresses, our tops, our pants, our undergarments, socks, and shoes. We're constantly exposed to these toxic chemicals unknowingly because most people aren't even thinking about this. Phthalates, which are known endocrine disruptors, can also cause things like heart disease, fertility issues, and even cancers. These chemicals are very dangerous to our health, yet no one's really talking about this. Clothing manufacturing regions are typically in the global south, and they're oftentimes countries of less economic standing. And these include countries in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Oceania. So we need to really consider the fact that not only are we wearing these toxic chemicals, but we really have to pay attention to what are the safety guidelines and safety measures, and are they being kept by manufacturers? So whether it is water contamination as we wash these clothing and the runoff water go into our land, or we're talking about the gas emissions, which textiles like these are responsible between 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions, textile waste piling up in our piling up in landfills. We really need to have the conversation of how can we change not just the industry, but changes start with our mindset. Changes start with our desire not to overconsume. Because every time you change your clothing, every time you change your household items and decor, every time you change your footwear, you are contributing to the problem. If you are over consuming, meaning you're constantly changing and buying these items, it creates a demand which keeps these businesses in operation and without any accountability. 60% of fast fashion items contain plastic-based fabrics. And while there are many states around the US that are looking at banning plastics, we need to consider just how much plastic is involved in the production of the clothing that we wear, and not just the bags that we put the clothing in. So, what exactly is the practical solution? And some would argue that part of the practical solution is decreasing consumption, but also increasing the purchasing of clothing that's made from natural fibers. And these natural fibers may include some of your more commonly known, such as flax, which produces our linen, hemp, agave, cotton, coconut, wheat, corn, rice, bamboo, one of the most favorite. So looking in at producing more of those clothing and consuming more of those clothing, but not over consuming. And certainly not over consuming also your home decor. But here's the thing that we must consider. As we consider shifting from fast fashion and man-made textiles to more natural type fibers, we also have to consider the pesticides that are used on the plants. And so if we're still using dangerous pesticides on these plants, even though we are consuming more natural-based fabrics, we are still exposed to toxins. So their solution is quite layered, but it definitely stops with we all have to consider stopping this overconsumption. It is psychological. And perhaps addressing the economic issues that are leading people to have this psychological mindset that feels like we must consume more. Secondary, supporting our natural fibers more and realizing, yes, we will not be able to produce the same amount when we're using natural fibers because there is a limitation to the production, to the growth, to the natural vulnerability to the weather, to the climate, right? But we should be okay with that. So perhaps considering getting some very classic items that you can use over and over again. Because you know what? Fast fashion doesn't last. It breaks down. I will tell you, I have lost several shoes this one year, okay, because of fast fashion, because they just simply cannot endure. They don't last. So if you want clothing that's going to last you longer, it's worth it to invest more in healthier, more natural options. And they are going to be more costly because they can't produce the same amount at the rate that you can create in a manufacturing plant. You can't grow cotton as fast as you can produce polyester. That's a given. But we have to be okay with that. We have to change our mindset. We cannot allow our desire to consume really cost us our health and cost us ultimately our lives. And so, as we are enjoying this holiday season and we're purchasing gifts for ourselves and our loved ones and our friends and our coworkers, I hope that we really consider these things, that as we go into a new year, that we really reconsider our mindset, that we really assess our own psychological issues that's leading us to desire more and more and more things. Is it because we want to feel wealthy? Is it because we want to feel like we're part of the Joneses? Is it because we want to fulfill some desire to feel that we have accomplished something in life and having a large amount of nothing means something to us? Whatever the underlying issue is, the problem is we have to all make the sacrifice for a better life on this planet that has been gifted to us by making the hard decisions and living in a more disciplined lifestyle where we decrease the consumption of the goods that are harming us. It just doesn't really make much sense for us to be consuming something that we know can be taking years off of our lives, either by affecting our endocrine system and even causing cancers. That's a big deal, y'all. So I hope I've given you some great food for thought and made you a more conscious consumer. This is Dr. T. I'm the hand behind the handle of Healthy Bump Club right here on YouTube and Healthy Bump Club on Instagram. I thank you guys for joining me today. I hope I have enlightened you on this topic of fast fashion, and hopefully you'll think about it at least. Don't forget to share your thoughts with us. Go ahead and drop a comment below, and don't forget to share this content with your family members. Perhaps let this be a discussion as you gather for the holidays. And we hope to see you guys when the next episode. And this is Dr. T. Just a friendly reminder. Don't forget to comment, like, and share. And go ahead, why not? Click that subscribe button. Help us to get to the next 1,000 subscribers. We thank you guys for supporting.